So maybe the person before you went on stage pissed off the whole audience. So your first joke just isn't going to work because they're in a bad spot. They're not really happy. So the goal is to make them be having fun by the end of your 10 minutes or the end of your 7 minutes. And if you did that, you killed. They might not know you killed, but when you go to the back of the room, all the comics will, because they recognize how hard it was, whatever you just did. Right.
Totally.
And on the other side, if you go into a hot room, you have to recognize that, yes, I just killed for 7 minutes or 10 minutes, but also that was a great room. Like, give a little credit.
Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Not jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. With Rudy Tyburczy.
Hey everyone, it is Rudy here, and before we get to our conversation with Turner Sparks, I just wanted to take a moment to thank my sponsors, which do not exist. So if you're my sponsor in the future listening to this, thank you. And I also wanted to encourage you to stop by and check out my 5-minute workouts. These are 5-minute workouts that you can do, or you can just watch. I have a lot of fun doing them. I put them together. I put 2 exercises together, and we warm up a little bit before them, and we do those exercises for about 5 minutes. I am talking, chatting, bullshitting, and just having a good old time. Sometimes the cats stop by, and I just totally believe that 5 minutes is better than no minutes. And if you have a little time to work out, then you should. If you want. If you don't want to, then who cares? But I really am enjoying making these 5-minute workouts. I make them in the backyard, in the snow, in my kitchen, at my gym, outside of my gym. The goal is pretty big when I think about it, and I'm excited to continue making them. Going to make 5 of those a week, so you can find those on patreon.com/jokesandthegym. Thank you for listening very much, and I'm super excited for you to get to hear my conversation with a friend of mine that I've known for many years. He gives a lot of really great insights into comedy and his life as a touring headliner and doing comedy in New York City. And we talk about his football league and running problems. So I hope you really enjoy my conversation with the one and only Turner Sparks. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Jokes and the Gym. I am your host, Rudy Tyburczy, and I am super excited here today to be talking with my friend. He is a comedian. I've known him for many years. He has multiple albums he has released. He has been on a ton of tours all over the globe, in fact. We met in Asia. I believe we met in China, actually. You can find his albums everywhere you find albums. His most recent release is called Double Happiness. It's hilarious. Please, everyone, put your hands together for my friend Turner Sparks.
Hey, I'll clap for myself.
Hey, there it is. Yeah, you got it. You're a comedian. You got it. How you got to
be your own
Turner?
best cheerleader.
Yeah, right.
That's the producer clap. Both of us produced comedy for so long. Andy Curtin and I, who I started with in Shanghai, and we always used to have a term like the producer clap or the producer laugh, like when the comedian's bombing, but the the comedian's fine, but the crowd stinks, you know. And so the producer sits in the back of the room and laughs really loud, ha 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 ha, ha to try to get the laughs going.
Yeah, that's a good tactic. I like that.
Or
tactic.
like the move where like the comedian's like, "Whoa, it's really good to be here," and the crowd's dead, so like no one reacts, and the producer's in the back going, "Yay!"
It is. I'm telling you, it's good to be here. Yeah.
Yeah. The producer's like, "We got to get this crowd going. I'll do it myself if I have to."
I wish I had a producer, Turner, that could clap for us in the background, and I'm just like forcing
one day.
it myself.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
We're getting a producer for this show who they just clap. Jimmy Schubert used to say to a bad crowd. Now you probably shouldn't say this these days. He used to say, "I'll come down there and tickle you if I have to get people to laugh." He's from a different time, though.
I'll come down there and tickle you. I have this old bit that I've never gotten to work about. I don't understand why NBA players don't use tickling more on defense.
Great idea.
Why not? MJ's up
Wasn't
there putting the tongue out. Why doesn't Magic give him a little tickle on the side?
Yeah, or the goose, a little pinch.
Yeah, a little pinchy.
Something. All you have to do is do it once. This is always my theory. You just pinch them hard once. Like when they're going up for the shot, when they're fully extended, shooting a three, like top of their arc, top of the jump. You pinch them once, or you hit them really hard and like with not with your fist, but like a little poke. You poke them in the stomach once.
Like water,
and then you get the foul. They call the foul. Fine, I'll take the foul. And then the rest of the game, you fake poke them when they're at the top. So then you don't actually touch them. So it is no foul. But you've already done it once, so they think you're going to do it again, and then they're like they're flinching back. The shot's never correct the rest of the game. I have no idea why people don't do that.
You're a menace. You're in their head. You're Lawrence Taylor. You're Draymond Green. You're just messing with your opponents. You are the king of the mental game right there. Tickle them away.
Tickle works too. Yeah, exactly. Same thing. Yours is probably nicer. But either way, it's one tickle. It's one real tickle, and then a lot of fake tickles the rest of the game, which is they can't call a foul if you don't touch the person.
No, just do. I'm not touching you.
Why are we not NBA coaches? Is my question.
Yeah, let's implement this defensive scheme.
Does Oregon State need a coach? Or does Oregon need a coach? Oregon basketball's good, right?
Oregon's good. I bet we could weasel into Oregon State. We could be a beaver for a season.
Who do they have? Michelle Obama's brother? Is he still the coach? Wasn't he the coach for a while? That's the last thing I've heard of their basketball program.
Yeah, that is kind of a good claim to fame. Michelle Obama's brother coached our basketball team.
That's what I know about them.
I mean, that probably means Barack has been in Corvallis, which I'm okay with.
I'm sure. Yeah.
We did Corvallis together. You and I. So one of the things that Turner does on the road is performs at a variety of country clubs, right? And so you're all over the place. And so I was able to do a couple of those with you last year. I did Corvallis and Eugene in 21 or 22?
It was 21. It was actually 2 years ago.
So it was like on the tail end of the pandemic. It was like right post-pandemic.
Yeah, it was one of those ones where they weren't sure if they were going to do the show, and maybe we might have to push back a year. And then at the last minute, they're like, okay, let's just do it. Let's do it. And then they were fun. I mean, the Corvallis one was great.
Yeah, the Corvallis one was great.
Yeah.
I remember you and I were both told things about the Eugene Country Club people before Eugene Country Club. It's like, okay, well, they're a little more old school than Corvallis.
Yes. Yeah. Corvallis people said that, right? Yeah. Like, you guys. Okay. Which I find is a trend. Whenever you're like on the road, people be like, you're going to that next town? They're going to stink. We're the good town. They don't know how to have fun down there.
It's like those other towns, they don't have any good times. Those are bad people there.
Yeah.
But Corvallis was rocking.
It was rocking. Yeah. And it was absolute blast. And it was a privately, remember like some guy, normally these country clubs, they're not really owned by anybody. It's kind of like there's all these members that have a board, and it's not a singular owner. There might be a company that owns 100 of them or something, but this one was owned by one guy. Some rich guy had just bought that country club, and he came to the show, and he was cool. Remember, he talked to us after. He was like 50 maybe, and he was like, "That was awesome. Why weren't you guys dirtier? You guys should have gone nuts." And we were like, I don't know. Normally at these, you're supposed to be clean at country clubs, And then, I was there again this year, and he came back. And when I came out this year of the show, this will mean something to you, probably not to like 99% of the audience. But sitting at the bar was Dennis Erickson.
Oh, former coach of the Seahawks?
Coach of the Seahawks and two-time national championship at University of Miami, my university.
Oh,
he won 2 championships for us, and then he went to the Seahawks, and then at some point he went to Oregon State, I guess. And so anyway, he wasn't watching the show, but he was like drunk at the bar, and they're like, "Oh yeah, he's like a real booze bag."
Did you go talk to Coach?
No, because he left the room 30 seconds before I got there. I went out and sold merch in the lobby, and everyone else just funneled into the bar. And so I came like 30 minutes after everybody else to the bar. And when I got to the bar, all of the audience was like, dude, you just missed Dennis Erickson. And they all showed me they had like pictures with him. And the bartender was like, yeah, man, he left like 30 seconds before you walked in. And he goes, he was blasted drunk. And I filled up his beer, like a glass of beer, you know, like a full pint glass. He goes, I filled up his pint glass. He had one sip and he walked out the front door of the club holding the glass. He just left. And it's not
what
even
are
like
you going to do?
I'm like, where was he going? He's like, I have no idea. They're not in a residential community or anything. They're like way up at it in the middle of nowhere. Like, was he walking home like to the other side of? But he was in town for like Legends Weekend at the football game or something like that. I don't even know if I'm allowed to tell all that story about him, but whatever. It's out there.
We can cut it if we need. It's
who cares?
I love the idea that like, oh my gosh, your favorite, like you had no clue he was gonna. That's like probably the last person you expected to see at the show.
I didn't know he coached at that school. Also, I'm in like for me, you know, it's a small town in Oregon. You're not in like New York City. You're not in San Francisco, LA. Yeah. But it just the cards lined up correctly, and I barely missed him. But yeah, there was like the baseball coach. I don't know. All these people were there. Anyway, it was pretty fun. But
that's so fun. And Corvallis was popping. I had a blast in Corvallis. Like we did the show in Corvallis on like a Friday or a Thursday, and then in Eugene the next day. And Corvallis was popping. They're like, "Oh, watch out for those people in Eugene." And then we're like, "Whatever." And we got to the Eugene Country Club, and they were very prim and proper.
Yeah, it was like it was coat and tie. What you think of as a country club, which is like, a little older, a lot of gray hair, coat and tie, the hum 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 hum.
Yeah,
and it was like the bad guys in Animal House, like that frat, but grown up. You know, probably the exact same people because that was the '60s, and then this was like 60 years later, so they were now in their 80s. And they were literally the bad guys in Animal House. I will say, I went back this year, and the club was like, "Hey, we figured out last time like how to market this thing. We think we have a much better audience." And it was like much different. It was like 180, totally different.
Love it. Good. I mean, I had a blast. Every show is a learning experience, right? I'm gonna go and have a good time, whether I'm crushing or not. We were just chatting a little bit, and I mean, you've done a couple hours built from these rooms, right? Built from going to these country club rooms. Do you find that what are the differences between a country club and like a comedy club?
Well, the main difference is first of all, I work like clean anyway. Yeah. So that's why the country club fits for me because I live in Brooklyn, New York, and I perform at most of the clubs in town, and I'm clean at all these clubs. And like, hopefully the goal is hopefully the crowd didn't notice. Hopefully it's like if there's specific people in the audience who that's what they're into, then they noticed. But then everyone else who's just out for comedy, like literally had no idea I was clean. That's always the goal.
Right. And do people come to you on the average show and say, "I wish you were dirtier," or is that just like people like in Corvallis?
No, that almost never happens. Yeah.
Okay.
And that happened again this year at Corvallis, by the way. Like but it doesn't happen until like 1 a.m. and they're all drunk and they're like, "Bro, you could have been dirtier. My wife and I were fine with it. We would have been fine with it." But what they don't understand is so that's the major difference between country clubs and comedy clubs. Comedy clubs, I'm in charge. The comedian is in charge of the show. Yeah. Country clubs, you are the guest. Those people are in charge. So if one of those people complains, like it would be selfish of me to go super dirty or break the rules at one of those because they're not going to get me fired. They're going to go get the general manager who booked me fired.
Gotcha.
You know, and it could be 90% of the people were totally fine with it. But if like just one guy and he's been a member since the 60s and he's on the board and his wife was upset by one joke and then all of a sudden it's the new GM's fault and like she's gone. She's out of there. So what I find at those country club shows is the staff is always very nervous before the show starts, more nervous than I am. Yeah. And then at the end, they are relieved. It's not a sense of like, sometimes like, yeah, you were great, but it's like equally, or you were good, or you were fine, or whatever. But it's equally a sense of like, oh my gosh, thank you for not getting us fired. Yeah. Just thank you so much. Because they're terrified that they know that the reputation of comedians is like, you're going to say one thing, but do the other. Like, yeah, I'll be clean. And then you're not when you get there, or whatever it might be. Right. Yeah.
It's such an important and interesting thought to consider the ecosystem of each individual show. You're going into a different place, and it's like, okay, different things are on the line for different people at different shows, at different venues, and it's like we all have to work together. That's the cool thing. And as a professional like you are, I mean, you've been on the road for years now, ever since you moved back from Asia. Essentially, you've been working on the road.
2016. Since then, pretty much.
Yeah, and you seem to hit the ground running, so you've had your fair share of tons of different shows all over the country.
Sure. Yeah, I've done terrible shows, good shows, bar shows, whatever, biker gangs, whatever you want.
Yeah.
Shows where the hockey game is still on and it's playing behind you, and no one will allow you to turn the TV off because that's what they're really there for.
Oh my gosh, those are still most of the shows I do, Turner. When you moved to the States from Asia, did you have a specific plan in mind for your comedy? Did you approach it with a plan or a goal or things that you knew you needed to do sequentially, or did you just kind of take it as it came to you?
Yeah, I kind of just took it as it came to me. I mean, I knew I needed to. I really just did that. But then once opportunities came, just dove in head first. So, for example, it actually took probably a year or maybe like 18 months to figure out the country club thing. And that was just because I was 90% clean at the time. And I had a country club in the city I grew up in Sacramento, ask if I could come do a show. And they were like, but it has to be clean. And I was just like, yeah, I think I could probably do that. Let me see. And I went and did it. And it was just one of those things that was all like instantly easy to do, like to perform for that audience, to my material matched their aesthetic in terms of whatever it was, where I felt a lot of other shows are uphill battles for me as being a mostly clean comedian. There's certain audiences that is true. There are audiences that don't want that. They're not looking for that. You're doing like the dirty at 12:30 in Vegas or whatever it is,
Yeah.
And I was doing all those because you're just scattergun approach to comedy when you first move to a country. You're like, I don't know, I'll try everything. I don't know what. And anytime someone offers you opportunity, you go, yes, I'll do it. I will host that midnight show where everyone's blacked out drunk. Why not? And then it takes a while. And then you're like, why am I not getting through? Why am I not getting through? And then all of a sudden this one country club thing is like, wow, I blasted straight through. That was great. And so once I realized I could do that, and frankly, there was like a decent amount of money in doing that, then I was just like, okay, this is how I'm going to make a living. So I knew I had to the goal was, I'm just going to make a living doing comedy. I'll figure out how to do it. And I lost money for like a year. And then once that came through, that kind of got me on the road, making a decent amount of money. And that also allowed me to start doing hours on the road, which was how I put my first album and second album together. And then since then I've brought in more comedy. I'm trying to do more comedy clubs and all that kind of stuff, which I do as well now.
That's so cool. We're talking about earlier off mic, the new hour, and you're out there working on your new hour. You have 2 hours that you put out there on albums. Double Happiness. What was the first one?
Live from the Friars Club.
Live at the Friars
Club. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. And I really liked the second one because it was a lot about your return to the States, right?
The first one was about the return to the States mostly. And then the second one was about, like, if I was to put it in one sentence, how to surviving a global pandemic in a 1-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, New York.
Okay.
Marriage, how my marriage survived the global pandemic. Yeah. So That's
That's
basically what your thesis statement, I would say. The log
And
line.
that makes perfect sense. And now you're on the third of the trilogy. You're on your third one. How is it going? How is your third hour going? How's it feeling on the road?
Feeling good. So I'm about halfway through it, but I know what I'm talking about now. For me, the hardest part is always figuring out what I'm talking about. What's the subject? So yeah, the first one was easy. That was moving home as a 34-year-old who doesn't know anything about America because I was gone for 12 years. And then the second one's about my marriage and the pandemic. And then this one is about the idea of should we have kids? Should we or should we not have kids?
Nice.
And trying to figure that out. So, but it took, if I don't have a topic, it's really hard for me to write. And then once I get the topic, I can just kind of blast straight through and jam it out. So really, I only got this topic maybe a few months ago, maybe 3 or 4 months ago. But once I locked into that, I'm like, okay, I know how to write this now. So
nice.
It almost sounds when I describe it like one man showy, but it's pure stand up. It's straight stand up, but just with a topic.
Right. I mean, that's Berbiglia, right? It's one man showy, but it's stand up with a topic. It's all supporting sentences to a main idea. That's how you do it.
Yes, I guess. But there's no, I don't know. I've never attempted a one man show. I don't even know if I could do a one man show. I mean, mine really is just stand up, but I don't know what the difference is at some point. You know what I mean? They almost like meld together. I think
I don't think there is much difference. I think with a one-man show, audiences are more okay with long sections of silence. That's the big difference.
I think that's right. And like movement, right? So like you walk from, there's might be like a child's bedroom on stage and you're like, and then I grew up, and you walk out of the child's bedroom and onto like a subway platform or something.
Yeah, a little more production value.
That, but yeah, production value. That's what I was thinking.
As comedians, we have to mime object? Yuck.
Yeah, you can actually have it there.
Yeah.
So the downside of what I do is that once that part of my life's over, that material is pretty much gone. Like I just have to continue writing new, but I don't know how to write otherwise. So that's just kind of where I am.
Right. Would you go, like, let's say, okay, you had an hour, your first hour, and it worked. You know it worked. What mental state would you be in if you still had to just do that hour now?
I think it would be very depressing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I would. I know we all know people who do that, right? And they're very unhappy. And you see them. We've all like middled for those guys or opened for those guys, and they're in their 60s and they're doing the same material they did. You can go look up like their live at the Carolines from 1988, and it's the exact same bits. And they're usually pretty bitter, and they're wondering why it didn't work out. They're like, why did he get that thing and I didn't get that thing? There's a lot of that talk in the green room, you know? I had someone say to me not too long ago that she was supposed to be Flo from Progressive.
Oh.
And the whole reason why things didn't work out for her is because that like bitch stole her commercial. And it was like an hour-long conversation in a green room that I couldn't get out of, that I just had to like nod I went, oh yeah, yep. Meanwhile, I'm like trying to look at notes because I'm going on soon, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm doing everything to I'm checking my watch. I don't even wear a watch. I'm trying to be like, well, can I? And she goes, and one more thing about Flo. She did this.
Oh my
and she
gosh.
did that to me.
Yep.
And I had that audition. But those people exist, and we all know those people. And I think, that's where I would be. I know there's a bit of mental health to this podcast. To me, a big, gigantic part of mental health is continuing to write. Yeah. If I don't write for a while, it's a bummer, you know, and I feel like I get stuck.
Absolutely. Everything I hear, read, see about mental health says you need to journal, essentially. And that's what comedians do every day, all the time. We're journaling the things that are hard we're writing down everything that's hard for us almost constantly. And so there is a place for it to go. I think we get kind of tangled up when we're basing what we write on the feedback, on external feedback. That's what I think where the kind of funkiness comes in for comedians mental health wise, when you put too much on that laugh that is returned based on our challenges. So if we're like writing about everything that's hard in our lives and then we share it with people and it doesn't get a response, that's a vulnerable state that like takes your knees out sometimes.
Yes, that stinks. When you're like, I'm sure everyone's had this experience. And then everyone's like, nope.
That's just you, buddy. Sorry about that.
I don't think that's true. I mean, I do think that's true what you're saying. But I think that there are so many different types of audiences that even if the one you're speaking to directly in that bar or that comedy club is like a nope audience to whatever you're saying, that doesn't mean there's a whole other group of people across town who don't. Yes, we relate to you exactly. You know, I mean, for sure that exists because where I live in New York, okay, you can do. There's all like the nerd rooms, right? Which is like you can be like, didn't we all think that one episode of Star Trek was nuts? And the audience will be like, yes, we all did, and you're in, and those are your people. Yeah. And then if you did those same jokes at in Harlem at like the Uptown Comedy Club, they might be like, I've never even heard of Star Wars, you know, or Star Trek, right? So that's not your audience. But then there's other jokes for that crowd that like relates. And then there's 10 different versions of all of that, right? There's now like a Chinese language scene in New York comedy. I mean, in New York City, where people are doing Chinese language stand-up. And I'm sure that experience, being a Chinese person in New York City, has its own jokes that we don't know about, that like aren't Americans are stupid because they do this, that, and that. Yes, they are. You know, like we were kind of doing the opposites in our scenes, like as a foreigner looking in on a culture. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. That's what we were. It wasn't just making fun of the place all the time. It was just like feeling connected to your people at the end of the day. And that's so cool.
And it's also having observations that if you're from there, you might not have because it's normal to you.
Yeah.
For anyone.
And even here, same in Eugene. I'm in Eugene, Oregon. Springfield's our neighbor town. It's literally the Springfield from The Simpsons. Eugene, I live in Shelbyville. Matt Groening has said that Springfield, Oregon is the Springfield. And so Eugene is Shelbyville. We're the next door. And so like, but Eugene is not Shelbyville. Eugene is, you know, hippie granola, but it's also got this kind of blue collar element to it. But we go next door to Springfield, and the mics and the shows that we do there are much more blue collar, are much more conservative. So it's like you go one town over. If you went to the Springfield Country Club, which I think there might be, but maybe not, you'd probably get another different vibe from the people there from Eugene, because Eugene and Springfield like to have that, you know, combativeness somehow. We care, but we don't care.
Yes. Yeah.
But not everything's going to fly in both spots.
I think there's audiences for whatever people are doing. We're kind of learning that with comedy. That there's two sides to this idea that, you know, there's people who will say, like the older comics were like, you know what? There used to be a time when you had to be funny for everybody, and a joke is a joke, and the goal was always to be funny for everybody. And I totally understand that. And there's a part of my brain that goes, yeah, I respect that more if you can be funny for everybody. But then also, if you flip that to music, there's never been a time where music had to be good for everybody. There's genres of music, right? There's a lot electronic dance music DJs that are wildly famous that I've never heard of and I never care to listen to in my life. I have no interest in that kind of music, but I get that they're good at what they do, right?
Yeah. That's a good thing. Good job.
Fine, go for it, you know?
Yay.
And yeah, not everyone can be whatever. What is that line? No, there's a great line from Wayne's World where he goes, listen, even Zeppelin didn't write tunes everybody liked. They left that to the Bee Gees, you know?
Yeah.
Which is one of the most brilliant lines of all time, which is like, there also is a thing that sucks about being good for everybody. Like the Bee Gees, like everyone liked the Bee Gees. Well, is that great? I don't know.
Yeah, I had this very elitist perspective when I first started comedy. I said, if everyone's laughing, you're doing something wrong. And that's like...
It's so funny. I had the opposite.
You had the opposite.
Everyone. Yeah. I came in with like, if you can only make this certain group laugh, you're not a real comedian. You have to be able to make... But I've really, the more I've gotten in, I've moved towards the middle. I think.
And it's not like I ever wanted to like purposefully exclude people, but I think just naturally your point of view shouldn't resonate with everyone. That's just how it works. It's like I'm not in there trying to piss people off, but I'm up there trying to do some weird stuff sometimes. I'm up there trying to make jokes that make me laugh on my own, and they're not going to make everyone laugh. I think
Sure.
where that perspective comes from me is like, you got to take some risks up there too. You got to do some jokes that are just for you and then see what happens, because that's, I think, the true act of creation, of quote unquote artistic expression, is like, okay, I'm going to take a chance on this and see what happens.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think that, I guess that having genres in comedy is not necessarily a bad thing, you know?
Yeah. So, okay, this is Jokes in the Gym. We've leaned heavily on jokes so far. For you, one of the questions I like to ask is, what has your gym been lately? And that could be the gym, or it could be mics, or it could be running trails, or it could be writing in a journal every day. What have you been working on? What has your gym been lately? What have you been working on?
Boy, I guess mentally it would be writing this new hour, but physically it's running. I run pretty regularly, a few days a week, and if I don't, it's like I get real, like, creativity goes away. I think the creativity it funnels into it. If I'm physically healthy, then it really helps the writing.
Oh my gosh, that's how I feel, except about running. Why did you choose the worst of all exercises?
Okay, so I will tell you, I ran in high school all 4 years, cross country and track for a couple of years. But basically it was just cross country again, because it was long. I ran long distance, like the 2 mile in track. Yeah. Or cross country meet was like 2.5 to 3.5 miles. It was the exact same training, the same thing.
Yeah.
And I remember hating it my first year, and then not really liking it my second year. And then my coach was like, hey, here's the deal. If you will, at some point, you're going to like running. And if you can get past that dislike and, I don't know, fear or avoidance of running, not fear is the right word, but just that thing where I don't like it, and if you can get through it at a young age here, for the rest of your life, you'll never avoid running. You'll never be scared of running. And whenever you're like, I need to work out, your first thought will be like, yeah, I know I can run. Why don't I just go running? And ultimately, that's one of the more healthy things you can do for your body. And so, I mean, it's not great for your knees probably, but everything else, it's pretty healthy. And so he's like, just get into it now. And it's totally true. So my whole life, whenever I've needed, like, I need to exercise, it's always like, yeah, I'll just go run a few miles.
That's so great. And it's such a great way to work out on the road too. You can do it anywhere you're working. It's just perfect.
Exactly. Yeah. So I do it so I try to run like 3 or 4 days a week in when I'm home. And then on the road though, it gets down, like I was just on the road for a few weeks, and it gets down to like 1 to 2. And even that I can feel when I get home, I feel like a mess. I feel like, and I don't even drink. I don't drink. Right. I don't do drugs, but even still, just from eating and like running less, I feel like almost like hungover by the end of the tour.
It's really true how much your body tells you when you're not doing what it wants. Like it'll just tell you like, hey, you don't feel good right now. And you know the reasons for that. Let's change. And we're just not, I think people are not in great shape because they're not good listeners. They don't know how to listen to their own bodies sometimes, because it's like, no, where do you feel that tightness? That tightness is telling you something about what you are or aren't doing, or telling you something about what you need. Are you are you a stretcher? What's your warm up like? Or do you just like put the shoes on and get out there? I'm like so envious of people who can just get up and go and do something. I have to make food and do a warm up and like chant for 20 minutes. I just have to do a lot in order to get to where.
Yeah, I have like a 5-10 minute stretching thing, maybe 10 minutes stretching, but I mean, if you're just putting on shoes and going out there, I mean, like I'm 41 years old. There's no way. It's been like a decade or more since I've been able to do that.
Right.
I mean, there's just like injury, and that's the dumbest thing to do at my age, because you run like once and then you're hurt, and then you don't run for a month because you're healing, or 2 months or whatever it is. So I do that. I've started playing on comedians flag football team in New York City.
Oh, there you
this,
go.
Like, indoor. It's super fun. And I would say that's now part of the workout. We play once a week. And it's like at this indoor gym that has a field in Brooklyn. And it's all comics. And we get destroyed every single week. Every other team is not comedians. They're just like 25-year-old Wall Street junior executives who were all like recently graduated from, Sigma Chi. And they murder us. But it's a blast. It's super fun.
Yeah, they're not up till 2 a.m. every night honing their craft.
No, and like half the guys on our team, they can't fit in the flags. Like they had to go buy their own. They're too fat for the flags, so they had to buy their own flags off eBay or whatever because the flags that the gym offers are too skinny for their waists. So we're not.
They have to buy the ones. They're just called fat flags. You're like, oh gosh, I have to get fat flags
because our season just ended. So at the last game, we all went out to a bar and we're sitting around, and like half the guys aren't going to play next season, which starts in January. So like the 6 of us are still there. We're like, all right, what comedians could we add to the team? And one guy's like, oh, I know this guy. He played like college hockey. I know this other guy. He played college basketball. We could get him. We could get him. And then we're like, I don't know what's better, like college hockey or college basketball. What's better? And I'm like, hey guys, can we just pause? Half of us are too fat for the flags. I think anyone would be good at this point. We're all like 40.
We don't need D1 athletes on this team. We need someone who can touch their toes.
Yeah, any of it. We hadn't won a game the whole year, and I'm like, I don't know. We're not putting them through the Wonderlic test to join this flag football team.
This isn't like a high bar. It's like, oh, that guy only played Division III lacrosse. It's like, I don't think it's going to work out.
That's literally what the conversations were like. Like, where'd he go? SUNY Binghamton? That's not a good enough school. We need a Syracuse grad if we're going to get through this.
They're like, you asked Goldman? He didn't even stay on BC's football team.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 2 years and he quit. Yeah.
I need a 6'6"
but
tight
that
end.
is I find in comedy, and I guess more and more people are going through this now. People work from home and stuff, like in any industry. But it's harder and harder to get just time to hang out with people you work with. And especially when you're in the back of a comedy club, it's competitive. There's a competitiveness to it, or at least in New York there is, where it's like we're all gunning for the same spot. We're all trying to get that 15-minute spot again next week and the next week and the next week. Yep. And so while we are kind of friends, it's all work related. It's all competitive. And to have like, all right, on Wednesdays, we just go do this, and it has nothing to do with our work is a pretty good and necessary, I think, thing to have.
I think that's a really undervalued perspective because so much of our friendship, of our social lives as comedians is based on those comedy hangs. And it's just about being out there. And when you're doing something like, I took a dance class recently. It's like, I just need to do something that's not in my normal comfort zone. I think it was my counselor who said to do something that makes you a little bit uncomfortable. Just do something it's low stakes uncomfortability. It's like, even if it doesn't go well, or even if it's not exactly what you want, that's okay, because it doesn't matter what's going to happen. And like doing that kind of stuff with other people is a fast way to build connection. And so when the comedy community is something like it was that we had, let's say, for example, in Asia, where it was very DIY, we did have a very communal perspective to it. I think it was so much easier to grow and build a cohesive community because we were all going through the same kind of stuff. We all needed a similar type of support. But now you come to, like you said, you go to the Mecca of Comedy, NYC, and it's like it
is,
at every mic you see.
At every mic, at every show, and it doesn't end. I mean, I have friends who work the Comedy Cellar, and you sit around and hang with them, and they're like, I don't know, man. I got 2 spots last week, but this week only 1. Am I out? Is it over? Am I done? That just conversation literally never ends. You know, people are like, I don't know. I'm doing clubs, but this guy's doing theaters. Like, wow, can I get to? I don't know if I can. This might be it. I might be done. Maybe I'm over. This is my last tour. it's rough. So there's got to be something that's like, yeah, but let's all just hang and play football.
Yeah, exactly. There's a D&D crew here in the local comedy scene, play D&D.
Oh, cool.
And that kind of stuff. It's like, I really appreciate that. I'm like, I try to get friends to just go see movies here and there or whatever. It's like, I just want to get out of the house and not do comedy, because a lot of the comedy here is open mics. I love doing comedy. I want to do comedy. I want to be at mics. I want to be out there. But sometimes when you've been out for 7, 8, 9, 10 nights in a row, you're like, I just need a Tuesday alone, you know, or doing something.
Like, think, and that's also, you need life experiences to write stuff, right?
Time to process.
Or then all the jokes, like we all know those comedians where the jokes are like about the open mic. They're almost like open mic. They're designed to work at open mics. And then you go perform for like a regular just comedy club audience, and they're like, what is this psycho?
Totally. And it's a balance, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's like, there's that question that you always need to be prepared for is, what are you going to say when people are listening? Because we get so used to that like open mic vibe of like, oh, it is low pressure. It doesn't matter. There's not anybody here that's going to impact my career trajectory other than the 4 people in the seats who, it's like, you have to take that perspective. Sometimes it's like, oh no, these 4 people are here too. It's like, let's have some fun. Let's do the best we can for these people. But a lot of times you're trying so hard to make that room laugh that when you get up in front of an audience that wants material, they're like, what is going on with this person?
Yeah, they can't all be 9/11 jokes, buddy.
That's what every open mic room loves, the 9/11 jokes. Golly.
Yeah. School shooter, 9/11, Epstein's Island. Those are the big 3, I think.
Just thunderous applause breaks for everyone. Oh my gosh. So here's a thing that happens in Eugene often, and I'm just interested to hear your experience with it. But a lot of the crowds I have found in this town and others kind of feel like they have to agree with the perspective of the comedian in order to laugh at it. It's like, we have to be fully on board with your angle and your beliefs in order for us to laugh at these jokes. Do you find that is a similar mindset throughout the country or in certain rooms, or is that not something that you are witnessing yourself?
Honestly, that's not something I'm witnessing. I don't find that the case. I find, that makes sense. I guess I understand that that's happening in Eugene, but I find that the idea that audiences are sensitive, in my experience, feels a little overblown. I think that because audiences are self-selecting. So the type of person who would come out to a comedy club, at least in New York, more and more feels like the type of person who's like, yes, say whatever you want, like the super supportive comedy crowd that goes, I don't like those people who tell you what to say. I want you to say whatever you want. And then there will be people who will disagree. You can feel them disagree with the premise. Sometimes that's by design. Sometimes the premise is meant to make the audience disagree with it, knowing that the joke is so good, you'll win them back with the joke. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to think of an example. I'm not sure what it might be, but I guess you could say to go with the open mic. I like if someone's like 9/11 was great, and then everyone's like, no one's on board for that. Although I guess there are a few people these days who are, but for the most part, they're mostly on TikTok. But for the most part, no one's on board. Stop what you're doing right now and read Bin Laden's letter to America, everybody. And come back. I was thinking about putting out a video. I was thinking about putting out a video being like, everyone stop what you're doing and go read Ted Kaczynski's manifesto. It makes sense. Manifesto. Just tell me it doesn't make sense.
Come on.
Tell me I'm wrong. I'm staking my job and my career on this statement. It makes sense. But no, for the most part, that premise would not. But then there's some twist in there that, like a talented comedian could make a twist and then be like, okay, well and then we'll all feel safe at the end. by the end, we're all feel safe. None of us, but like the reveal is a twist that you feel good about. So I do find that sometimes there are crowds. Yes. Now I'm thinking about it. To be honest, I'm not meaning to pick on anybody, but usually there's one club I play in New York where it's mostly like a younger audience. It's right near NYU. A lot of students come, and they will be out on the premise and then never come back in. They won't listen to the rest. But I feel like people 30 and older, maybe even like 28, 25 and older, have kind of will give you like a beat or two to be like, all right, what are we talking about here? And then, oh, that's the joke. Okay, cool.
Yeah. No, I think you're right too. I think it is overblown, this sensitivity talk about audiences, but I also think it exists and it's there. And also people are more forgiving than you might expect. There's very few people who I see people who leave or who are disruptive at a show, but that's few and far between. I actually really like Corvallis. Corvallis, we've gone to a few times in this conversation, but because one of the best mics in the state is in Corvallis. They have a mic that used to be every other week, and now it's weekly. It's at a Mexican restaurant called Bombs Away on Wednesdays. And for my money, it's one of the best mic rooms in the country. It's like so fun. It's just packed. It's like a room. It's packed with 30 or 40 people in there, and they will listen to your jokes. And if they don't like your jokes, they'll give your next joke a try. I'm like, who are these people? These are amazing. And I think it's because Corvallis is a blue collar town, but it's also a university town. So it has that mixture of like highbrow and less than highbrow.
That's so important, I think.
It's so important, and the people are like willing to play, willing to give you a try. And so whenever I do go to Corvallis, I'm like, okay, this is good news. These people are here, and Corvallis is like isolated. It's got poor connectivity. There's few things to do. You think Eugene is a university town? Corvallis is a university town, so it's like them leaving the Pac-12. That feels like a lot bigger blow than a lot of other teams, because the Pac-12 as an NCAA conference is dissolving. So they're just kind of
going, by the way.
I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I think they're just going to be an independent. They're playing the Ducks next year. They did get that in the schedule, but so I'm glad that the UO OSU Civil War still be there. But it's just like one of the best mics. Yeah,
their sports are good. I think you hit on something which I think the best comedy places in America always have exactly what you just said, which is that there's like a connectiveness to an appreciation for blue collar work, and maybe because they are, or their dad is, or their cousin is, or something, you know, so that elitist thing is gone. That idea that I've never met someone who has to work for a living, so all middle class people and below are scum to me, and they, which there are cities like that, and then there are audiences like that, and then, but they're still like they can get intelligent jokes. They're not like just say tits. Why didn't you say tits more? I would have laughed if the other guy before him said tits a lot. That guy's way funnier.
But if the last guy said tits a bunch, then you don't have to say it, and they're still happy.
yeah, exactly. So they're not trying to like get the guy who said tits a bunch fired from his job, but also if you do a joke about like, I don't know, some geopolitical thing, they go, yeah, I know what that means. I know who Frida Kahlo is or whatever,
Yeah, exactly.
The eyebrow
like
lady.
You can laugh at both sides of the feminist jokes or whatever. Sometimes, like you don't have, I'm not saying Matt Rife's opener is a great opener, and I'm not defending that, but you have to be able to laugh at a good joke about a controversial subject.
So that brings up a topic. I feel like I'm just guiding your podcast here.
I love it. You're great. You've hosted a podcast for many years, so you're the pro.
So Well, no. But I think that my perspective comes from my audiences too. So because I talk about my life as it is right now, my act is about being a guy who's 41. You know, I don't really say my age on stage, but it's just the thing. So then, therefore, my audiences are not like 18-year-old, 20-year-olds. They just aren't. So unless I'm doing some random spot in New York City and I happen to be in a room like that, but if it's my crowd on the road, they're usually in their 30s, 40s, 50s. So then I don't see that pushback because it's like a self-selecting audience. Whereas Matt Rife kind of designed his audience in a way that that's who they are. And so then, therefore, when they were blown away and shocked by his first joke and wanted to end his career, that's kind of the audience he put together, whether intentionally or unintentionally. That's just the way it happened, right? So if his audience was people in their 30s and 40s, that's not as great for advertisers are not, they don't want to, they want the 18 to 24 market. We all know that. They don't want the 35 to 50. Boo, who needs them? But then that's kind of what you get.
Yeah. Well, isn't 30 to 50 the spending market? I guess 18 to 24 is important.
18. Yeah, but you want the advertising people say you want the 18 to 24 because if you get them when they're 18, you're going to have them till they're 60. So you have them now for the next 40 years. Whereas
sounds like a Marlboro exec.
But I mean, they're all Marlboro execs. The people at Downey are Marlboro execs. You know, I mean, they're all striving to be. That's the height. That's the pinnacle. If they get that next promotion, maybe Marlboro will be interested. Yeah, they're all evil. But the 50-year-old in their mind is going to be dead in 2 years. So who cares? You know, they're old. They're yesterday's. So that's my theory on him is that it's a product of how his audience developed themselves.
So do you think him doing that opening, I haven't even watched the special to be honest. I've watched some of his clips. He makes me laugh. He's charming. He's charismatic, right? He's entertaining on stage. I don't know much about him.
All
as
I've
far
ever
as
heard
a
is he's
joke
a
writer.
nice guy. I will say too, from people who've met him and been in green rooms, everyone says he's great as a person.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, that's most, maybe it's not most comedians. I would say it's most comedians are pretty decent people. I would say most, right? We get to say most.
Definitely.
But like, do you think making a statement like that with the first joke on your special is like doing it on purpose to get a response?
Oh man, do you want my real? Okay, let's go real. I'll give you my
I'd
real
love
opinion.
to. Yeah.
So we all know that that's a street joke. We've all heard that joke 100 times.
It's not good or original.
The joke is what. It's the joke we heard in the 90s when we were 10 years old, which is, what do you tell a girl with a black eye? Nothing. You already told her. What do you tell a girl with two black eyes? Nothing. You already told her twice. It's a joke that no one's done.
Joke.
And I don't even have a problem saying that on this podcast because I don't think anyone's hearing that for the first time. I think everyone listening to this goes, yeah, I remember that from when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So that's the joke he did. To me, it's like, what are you doing? Why are you doing a street joke to open your special?
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't offend me. It's the Seinfeld line. It offends me as a comedian. Does it offend you as a Jew? No, it offends me as a comedian.
It's awful that some guy was given a Netflix special and that's what he chose to open it with. What a drag.
What are you doing?
Goodness
and the whole narrative with him was that, hey man, I'm an overnight sensation. Yes, I kind of got this because my Instagram blew up because I was doing these crowd work clips, but I've been in comedy for 12 years. I've been prepared for this moment. I've been on the road. I'm a road dog who the world is just discovering. So, which is true. He has been in comedy for like 12 years. So if that's the case, I would hope you'd be a little more prepared than to open with a street joke.
Yeah. You know, if you're going to open with some kind of high impact joke, I think Shane Gillis nailed it with his first special. Oh my god, if we're going to talk about controversial subjects and opening jokes, like it's like, no, you can make a really fun joke about really awful stuff and it goes over really well. Like, oh my gosh, I don't know about
joke?
you.
I don't even remember it. Was it the one about the Special Olympics?
It was about age of consent. The Special
Yes.
Olympics was kind of his closer bit, but the Age of Consent bit is just a perfectly crafted joke about a totally horrible subject.
He's also I've seen him live just doing spots in New York when I had no idea who he was. This was before the SNL thing, before everything. It was like the day he showed up in New York City. And I know he had just gotten there because I was at New York Comedy Club, and sometimes at New York Comedy Club, they'll be like, hey, before you go on, we have an audition set. This person's going to do 5 minutes or 7 minutes. They're trying out to join the club. 99 out of 100 times, like we've already established how competitive it is and cutthroat in New York City. And so you sit in the back, you watch the audition set. Usually they're not that good because they're auditioning. They're newer. They might be like 8 years into comedy, but compared to the other comedians in New York, they're just not as good. And that's how it's designed to be, right? Yeah. I watched his audition set. And I'm like, why is this guy auditioning? So he was doing an audition set the night I was on. Like, why is this guy auditioning one of the best comedians I've ever seen in my life? And I was terrified. I was like, what? How many other people are out there like this guy that are moving to New York? Because people move to New York every single day to take your spot. There's comedians moving there every day. And how many other people? Who's coming tomorrow? Who's coming to the next day? Like, am I done? Am I over? Like, is everyone out there this good? But
that's got to get you so good too, and so prepared at any moment.
It pushes you to be better and better and better. But anyway, then like a week later, or whatever it was, the SNL thing came out and all that. And I'm like, oh, this guy's he got fired an hour later from SNL. But the fact that he even got SNL, I'm like, okay, well, I know not everyone's moving to New York City and getting Saturday Night Live a week later, so I know that that's a 101 thing. But he's incredibly high level stand up.
He's so funny. He's like the funniest guy I've seen since Louis, just like as a pound for pound funny comedian.
So for me, my version of Louis is Norm Macdonald. Norm Macdonald's been my favorite comedian since I was like 12. And to me, same thing though. He's the funniest since Norm.
It's just like you watch and you're like, he makes it look effortless. He makes every step look so. It's like when you watch a ballroom dancer and you're like, oh my God, that's easy. I could do that. And then you get up there with a partner and you're like, whoop, nope, I have no clue.
Yes. Yeah. He's wildly good. So, but yeah. So anyway, with Matt Rife, I think that he also, it goes back to kind of knowing yourself. I would say when you genuinely know who you are as a person, then you know who you are as a comic. And if you don't know who you are as a person, you really can't know who you are as a comic, I don't think. And every once in a while, somebody can fake it. You can meet somebody who's just a total asshole in a green room, and then they're so likable on stage as a comedian. But that's pretty hard to do. Most of it, the crowd can feel who you are when you're on stage, usually. And not saying he does seem like a nice person, but I think I would say he was probably insecure as to who his audience was and how he had blown up so fast. And so he opened with that joke. Take out the fact that it was a street joke and a hack joke. He opened with that, I think, as a way to be like, this isn't who I am. I'm really this edgy guy. And I'm gonna, my comedy is for men just as much as it is for women. And I'm a tough guy and all that. When really, if he was kind of comfortable in his own skin, would have just been like, whatever. Hey, this is insane. I'm famous now. How the hell did this happen? Because I don't think anyone hated him I'm sure there's people online who didn't like him for it, but ultimately everyone I heard in comedy was like, hey, he's a nice guy. Good for him. He's doing well.
Right. Be hot and jump to the top and be funny. Go for it.
Exactly.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Obviously he works out and he's like preparing all the time to do this. Like that's, I think, also kind of one of the things that I try to be in a triple stance as a human, as a comedian, as a performer. It's like be able to go with where external environments are dictating. Like I got to be able to dribble, pass, shoot, defend. I have to be able to do a variety of things.
5-tool ball player.
Right? Yeah. I want to be that shortstop who hits home runs, but it's not always the case. to get back to like where you want to be, we've been here almost an hour, so there's a couple things I want to get to before we take off. Where, because I just want to talk to you about New York stuff. It's so easy to talk about the people you've seen and the shows you do in New York, because I think it's also super valuable for people who might listen to this and who are thinking about those kind of moves. What's your typical advice to someone who's like, oh my God, I'm moving to New York, or my cousin's going to go to New York to chase comedy? What is your like main thing for people to keep in mind who are making that consideration or that move?
Yeah. So first of all, you have to get into the scene as quickly as possible. And the way to do that is not that complicated. It just involves sacrifice, humbling yourself, and hard work. So that means definitely 100% start your own show. Start a weekly show, start a monthly show. If you can do weekly, that's better. Start a monthly show, whatever it might be, because you need to provide a space for where you can book comedians to come do your show. So if no one knows who you are, no one's going to book you to be on their show. So the only way to get to know the comedy scene is to create a show. You did that in Korea. I did that in Suzhou, China. Create your own show and book comics that you like and that you think you might be friends with, and you respect their comedy. And then that's a way you're now showcasing. They're going to come to your show. They're going to watch you perform on stage. And then they might go, hey, that guy's good. He just moved here. That lady's good. She just moved here. I'm going to tell them to go do this show. They might start recommending other shows in town for you to do. But no one's going to frankly do you a favor until you do them a favor, which the favor you're doing them is giving them a spot to go do time. Right.
Yeah. Right. Well, I owe you a big favor for doing me a favor, Turner. Thank you for being on this. I'm not sure what the favor is I can repay you. I'm not booking any country clubs right now.
There's no favor that you need to repay me. I'm just saying the reality of comedy in New York City. There's so many comedians.
Yeah.
It's the idea that you're just gonna kind of like land in town, parachute in, and be like, "I'm here, New York, make me famous." Like it's just not the way it works. So then the other thing is, and I did this for a year, and everyone I know who moves here, I tell them to do, find a club and go bark at it. And that means you stand outside, you sell tickets, you try to get people to come in exchange for stage time. They will put you on stage because you're working for them, usually for free, or they allow you sell tickets and you get to keep a portion of the tickets. And I would say do that for 1 year and don't worry about getting into all 20 clubs in New York City at once. Just stick at that one club, and that way everyone will come through that club. It's another way to get people to see you perform. You'll meet all the other comedians coming to town. No other comedians care. Like when you're on a show, no kind of veteran comedians care if you're the barker or if you're just doing a spot. To them, we're all equal. We're all doing spots.
All comics.
90% of these comics were barkers at one point. Mark Norman started out selling tickets in Times Square. Everybody does that kind of stuff. So there's also respect to that. People respect that you're doing it. They don't look down on you. There's no shame involved. So go do it. It stinks. No one likes it, but you have to do it. And that's the people I know who don't do that get ingratiated to the scene at a much slower pace than the people I know who do. So do those two things and then just get good. Be as good as you can. Be as nice to everybody. Shake hands, all that kind of stuff.
That's amazing advice. And those three things, sacrifice, hard work, and humble yourself, that's exactly the same thing you have to do at the gym. The exact same thing you have to do if you want to get in good shape. You have to prioritize. It's like, okay, where am I putting health? Where am I putting working out? Where am I putting food? Where am I putting sleep? Same thing with comedy. It's like, okay, I'm moving to New York. I have to understand that barking is probably going to be above eating for a little while.
Yeah.
Like you have to make these lists that put your very real physical needs below your dreams, which is like insane as far as life.
Yeah, because and I also have a friend who barked for a year and he barked at a club that was popular, like successful. So he was coming home with like $250 in a night from doing it because they let you split the ticket sales. I barked at a club that was all the shows were free. So I didn't make anything, but I got stage time. I did it for a solid year. And most of the good friends I have now in New York comedy, we all barked together that first year.
Yeah.
And we all worked at that little shitty club in New York City, and they're all on the road now. And I have a video I put out a couple weeks ago. We were making fun of crowd work clips. It was done by Gus Tate, directed it, who I started with in China. Isabel Hagen and I are in it, and we're both road comics now. We were both at that little tiny club. Most of so you'll find that's also how you build a community. You build friends. And going out and like the idea of just hanging out at a club, people used to tell you to do that. Like, go hang, go be a good hang. It doesn't actually do that much if you're not contributing. You need to contribute in some way. So those are the ways to do it, I would say.
That's a great point. Hang and contribute. Don't just hang, unless that's all you want, unless you just want to hang.
I mean, I guess you can hang, but I don't see, like, people like, I hang, and like, if people like me, they'll put me on shows. I kind of, but there's a quicker way to do it.
Yeah.
The hanging does nothing for anybody except you're kind of in the way a little bit. It's like, all right, I need to get through because I got to get to the stage, and you're like talking and loudly near the bar or whatever,
Be a good hang.
Be a good hang and contribute. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Nice. I'll get two quick things or not, however much you want to put into them before we move on. What are your kind of, we've talked about what you've accomplished already, and you also have a podcast. You're active on social media. I'm always curious about people's goals and like thinking about like maybe in a year and maybe in 5 years. What are some of the things that you've kind of put on your vision board or things that you've outlined that you might want to accomplish in maybe those time frames?
So it's the first one is I would say for a while it was begrudgingly. I've now like wrapped my head around a way to, I think, do it and make it fun and make it part of my career, but it's building all the social media stuff. And it's just a necessary reality of comedy that I've produced a pilot for a TV show I did last year, which I'm very proud of. I really like how the pilot came out. I sent it all around. Andy, Curtin is a manager. He doesn't manage me, but he's a manager out in Australia for comedians in that region of the world. Nice. He's tried to help me. I've had a number of really good friends try to help me sell it, and everyone came back and they're like, hey, everyone thinks this is great, but you don't have enough of a presence online. And so that's the next thing. So it's how can I make my social media fun for me and it be an extension of my stand-up. So yes, put out stand-up clips, but also do sketches. Also just build my kind of my
presence.
Yeah, my presence. Like, but with the way taking what I do in stand-up as an aesthetic, as a sensibility, as a point of view, and extending that into sketches and everything. So it all matches. It all fits together.
That's a really mature perspective and a really wise one, because I think so many people put that content before the comedy these days. It's like that's what people are who are featuring a lot of times for these headliners who are bangers. Yeah, or even headlining, totally.
Honestly,
but it's like they have the numbers, they've got the YouTube numbers, they've got the Instagram, TikTok numbers. So it's like they're doing the hours because they're bringing people, and it's like, well, that's cool
act.
And all, but where is the talent? Like when they're going to flame out. They're going to flame out.
Definitely. And so I think that we all, we've been in it a long time. We all have the talent. I was talking to this last night. I was at the New York Comedy Club holiday party, and me and 3 or 4 other comics were talking about it. And we're like, everyone in this room, it was all people who work the club regularly. We all have the talent to back up that thing. So now we should probably be doing it because it's really just an advertisement so that people will come see us on the road and then go, wow, that was a great night out. So that's next. And also just, I now have a clear idea who my audience is. I think that's a big step is figuring out like, who am I talking to? And ultimately it took a decade to find out. I was just talking to people who were like me. I probably could have figured that out earlier. But once you know that, because I think there's also this idea that you want to, I'm not that cool, like my comedy is not that cool. It's not that, it's more along the lines of like, I would say I would fit into like a Jim Gaffigan audience or a Brian Regan audience, or some Nate Bargatze now is taking clean comedy in this direction where it can be cool, which is a new thing. I mean, up until 6 months ago, you just would never tell anyone you were a clean comedian. And now if you do, people go, I love Nate Bargatze. And you go, okay, yeah, cool, great. I've been doing that for a decade.
That's
I
so
mean,
cool.
I'm not saying he's not great. He's fantastic. But it's awesome that he's almost like Trojan horse this whole thing for us for now.
It was so fun to see him crush on the SNL monologue. It's like, oh, that is what a funny person does in front of that crowd. They annihilate. That is what a comedian. It was so good. It's like, oh yeah, I hadn't been on the Bargatze train for a little, but that kind of got my ticket. I got another ticket after that.
And it's also made me wonder, why don't they just book more stand-ups? Stand-ups are popular now. They're selling out Madison Square Garden every week. You know. Like there's 10 of them. You could get Chris DiStefano. He could host Saturday Night Live.
Just nail it.
He's pretty big. I mean, I know he's not a movie star, but Bargatze's not either. They're not movie stars.
Who's the next one? Probably Maniscalco. Sebastian. He's got movies and TV stuff now. He's probably going to host it soon. Yeah, he would nail a New York crowd. Oh my gosh.
Totally. He's clean as well. Yeah. He's
clean
as well. Yeah, he is. Yeah. And as another one of those that you don't necessarily know, right? You don't think about it, but
did you go clean on purpose, or was that just how it happened for you?
Oh yeah, so I was like 90% clean, and then this country club asked me to be clean, and I realized I could do it. And when I realized I could do it, immediately the country club was like, "Hey, if you can do that again, if you can replicate what you just did, there's like a whole world of clubs out there looking for this." Because they were saying that the country clubs either what the guy was like, not an 80-year-old. He was like a 45, 50-year-old dude who manages this place. And he goes, what we're running into is you either get a clean comedian who's like a 75-year-old hack, who's like, kids these days, they don't know this. Or they're not, just like there's nothing current about it. Or you're getting a younger comic who says they can do clean, and then the first joke bombs, and then they just go dirty, and then and so he's like, there's not a lot of the world of people who are clean, but also kind of like, I don't know, whatever the term might be, what Bargatze does.
Good.
Yeah, I guess good. And so, I guess that's it. And so then I was like, yeah, I can do that. And I was 90% clean anyway. And so that just kind of pushed me a little bit towards it. And then I kind of realized I liked it. And it's where my sensibility falls anyway. So
that's so cool. How nice to be able to find that aspect of your act, of your voice at a relatively early time in your career as well. And that might kind of lead into the next question. What advice would you give to your younger self, your early comedy self? Like you now, what do you wish you had known when you started, or what kind of input would you try to put in Little Turner's head in Suzhou, China?
Oh man.
Because you've been doing this about 14, 15 years, somewhere around there.
2010, 2013.
Okay.
Yeah. Man, I would say, if I could have done it, it pains me to say this, but probably moved to New York earlier. Because I don't know, that's such a 50-50, because like we had the ability, you and I and all of our friends, to do longer sets at a much earlier time frame than people who started in New York City, because it's so hard to get 5 minutes and then get 7 and then get 10. But on the other hand, so I do think starting somewhere besides a big city was definitely great, because it gave us the ability to stretch. But I moved I don't know, man. I moved to New York 6 years in to comedy, and maybe a year earlier, maybe 2. I don't know. I don't know, man. That's other advice. I'm fumbling here.
That's fine.
I'm sure there's a lot.
What advice do you give to young comedians if you're chatting today?
Okay. Well, here's one that I would have thought of earlier. Is I would have liked to have. I would give myself at an earlier age, is that when you're hosting, I host a lot now, that the job in general, when you're doing 6 comics on a bill, leave the crowd in a better place than you found them. I think I heard Regan say that. And I used to go on stage, but the first joke didn't work and I would panic. And then the rest of the set wouldn't work because I was in my head about the first joke not working. And especially when you're doing showcases or when you're headlining, whatever, you can't control what happened in the room before you got on stage. So maybe the person before you went on stage pissed off the whole audience. So your first joke just isn't going to work because they're in a bad spot. They're not really happy. So the goal is to make them be having fun by the end of your 10 minutes or the end of your 7 minutes. And if you did that, you killed. They might not know you killed, but when you go to the back of the room, all the comics will, because they recognize how hard it was, whatever you just did. Right.
Totally.
And on the other side, if you go into a hot room, you have to recognize that, yes, I just killed for 7 minutes or 10 minutes, but also that was a great room. Like, give a little credit, and so not be like, I'm done. I quit. I'm now a professional, and it's over. Like, the money's coming in now. And be aware that maybe they started out hot and then you left them a little weaker at the end. Well, that's not the opposite's a better set than that, even if you didn't do well for as long. So, but I think the big one was just to not panic the first few minutes on stage. And especially if you're hosting. I host a lot in New York now, and you're not supposed to be killing right off the top. There's some get to know you phase to it, right? So really you're just supposed to, by the end of your 10 or by the end of your 15, set it up so the next guy or woman can walk on stage and just start crushing.
Yeah.
And I think that was advice I heard later on from like a Regan on a podcast. I'm like, man, I wish I knew that going in.
It's one of those things that's so good to keep in mind. It's like, oh yeah, there are other people on this show, and I want to do my part to make it better for them, to make my chances of getting rehired or do this gig again. I want to give some thankfulness, gratitude to the person before me for setting it up. Like, it is an ecosystem, a comedy show. And it's like, oh yeah, I have a role to play. And as a DIY producer, comedian, opener, host, headliner, floor cleaner that I am, it's hard for me to come in and just do one role. So anytime I have one role to fill, I'm so thankful, and I do everything I can to fulfill that role as best as I can, because it's like, oh my gosh, there's so many. I know what it's like to be a producer. I know what it's like to be someone who's worried about the audience or what's coming up. So it's like, how can we all kind of do our little thing to make this show really fun for the people who are there? Because live stand-up comedy is unlike anything else. It's so great. I just go back to that all the time, because when you're laughing in a room with a bunch of strangers at shared pain of someone who's brave enough to put that in front of everyone else, like, that's a beautiful thing. And you get to breathe all that air and take in all those little laughter particles that everyone else is putting out that you helped create. What a good day. That's cool that you get to do that. It's so great.
I thought of one more, and this is maybe the most important, that I really didn't realize till maybe like 3 years ago. The crowd came to the show to have a good time. They want you to do well.
Yeah.
I feel like I went a decade before I processed that correctly. I wish that would have sunk in early on. They're there because they paid money. They want everything. They want to laugh. They're giving you the benefit of the doubt. They are not your adversaries. For a while, I was like, it's me against this crowd, which is not at all. We're all on the same team.
Yeah.
And the minute, that's really good thing. I wish I knew that earlier.
That perspective shift influences so much of just how you are on stage. And an audience can smell fear. They can smell a bullshitter. They can smell blood in the water. So if you're giving them your authentic self of like, oh, we're here to have fun together, they'll pick up on that. Even if you don't. And that's how I get by on sometimes material that's not fully polished or ready to go at every show. It's like, I'm here because I want us to have fun, and I'm going to do my best. It might not always crush, but it's going to be a good time.
Well, and going back to Shane Gillis, I think that's how he and a lot of comedians can get away with challenging raw, what you might consider wrong material, like material that presents a point of view that no one agrees with, but you can just tell he's there for a fun time. So you're like, wow, I don't agree with that statement, but I know he's joking. I can tell he's joking. I can tell this is all we're in a place of safety because the point is fun, right?
Yeah. The point is fun. And that's a good thing to keep in mind. That's what I do on the mic, and that's what I try to do at the gym. I do it because I have fun. I'm having fun out there. And if you're not having fun, then figure out how to make it fun.
Yes.
Figure out
That's
how to
great.
make it fun. Oh my gosh. Turner, I appreciate you so much. I've really enjoyed watching you and your career continue to grow and blossom and change. And I'm excited to see, when you get your first crack at SNL.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you too, Rudy. There's not seriously, there's not so many people, that can say we all started together in our little communities. We were in different countries, but we were essentially one community. So it's a bond forever, man. I'm happy to still be in touch, still know you, and grow together.
Absolutely, Turner. It's a pleasure. Thanks. And everyone, go find Turner Sparks on Instagram and the internet. Just Turner Sparks, yeah?
At Turner Sparks on Instagram, at Turner Sparks Comedy on TikTok for all the kids out there.
Oh, yeah, the talk. Nice. Anything else you want to plug? Any shows or things?
I think that's it. I mean, go to turnersparks.com for my tour dates, but I'm around the country all the time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Turner. I look forward to our next time chatting.
Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Not jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym.
With Rudy Tyburczy.